Alright, budget magic time. Playing some Burn at the Stake Soul Sisters. And we got Soul Sisters and Burn at the Stake. Little landlight, but Serum Visions for our opponent. Opponent passes. Well, Plains and Soul Warden. Ship the turn. See what our opponent's doing over there. Probably some sort of... Ooh. I was going to say combo deck, but apparently not. Well, let's get in with Soul Warden. Waterveil Abbey and try a Genesis Chamber. Draws out a Remand. Alright, pass turn. Another island, and opponent passes. Well, let's get in with Soul Warden. Play Champion of the Parish. Gain a life. Battlefield Forge and Genesis Chamber. Ooh, it resolved. I was trying to use Champion as a bait spell there, because I figured mono blue. Oh, goodness, this is a extra turn deck. This is going to be interesting. Oh, my God. Radiant Fountain gains our opponent some life. And passes. We draw Squadron Hawk and Genesis Chamber. Well, let's attack with both. Play Genesis Chamber number 2. Play a Soul Warden, get a million triggers, gain a ton of life. So each creature gets 2 1/1s and gains us, oh my goodness, 6 life? So we're up to 26. I'm expecting our opponent to start comboing off with extra turns at some point fairly soon. What we really want to do is draw into red mana for this Burn at the Stake, because we're going to get to the point where one Burn at the Stake is going to be lethal. Opponent goes with Exhaustion. Oh, this might be a... this might be a version of our Owling Mine deck, actually. We did not draw land, unfortunately. Another land for our opponent. Okay, Time Warp. Well, never mind. Now we might just get comboed off and lose. Although our opponent's only drawing 1 extra card a turn at this point. Another Exhaustion. Unfortunately, we're really bad at drawing lands. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. We're drawing so many extra cards, but none of them are lands. And our opponent has another Dictate. Well, we might be dead now, honestly. With our opponent drawing another Dictate, their odds of hitting extra turn spells goes way, way up. Time Warp. And a Serum Visions. So our opponent gets another turn. If we had drawn lands, things would have been a lot better. Temporal Mastery for an extra turn. Draws some cards. Temporal Mastery. Passes. Draws some extra cards. There's a Part the Waterveil. If we had drawn lands, we would have had untapped creatures for chumping, which might have made a difference, potentially. And another Part the Waterveil. Yeah, we needed to draw some lands there. Unfortunately, our deck should have Wear Tear in the sideboard, but Moto uber buggy, so we don't actually have it because it didn't import it, and I didn't check that before we played this match, which means we're probably in rough shape. Well, we can bring in the Outnumber, because that can actually kill a Awoken land, but we would be bringing in all the Wear Tears, but instead, we are not. I guess we bring in the Witchbane Orbs for Exhaustion. So we get to play first. I guess we just want to be aggressive. This hand would be awesome if we had 2 lands. We got Soul Attendant into Pridemate, but with 1 land, there's a chance we just never play a spell. This is much less exciting, but I guess we keep. Well, there's a Soul Warden. So let's just Windscarred Crag, gain a life, pass the turn. This might not be fast enough, though, honestly. Land for our opponent, and a Serum Visions. So let's Champion of the Parish, Temple of Triumph, Put outnumbered to the bottom for now. Pass the turn. Opponent passes. We get a Soul Warden. Pumps up Champion. Westville Abbey. And a Johnny's Pride Mate. Pumps up Pride Mate. So we get in for 2. And pass the turn. So our best bet might be to try to win with Burn at the Stake. Opponent miracles a Temporal Mastery, which is pretty much rampant growth here. They get a land drop, theoretically. So second turn. Radiant Fountain. Gains our opponent a couple life. And Serum Visions. We get a Soul Attendant. Well, Temple of Triumph. Windscarred Crag, 2 slow to the bottom. Play a Soul's Attendant. Pumps up Champion. Gains a life. Pumps up Pride Mate. Attack with everything. Put our opponent to 12. And in theory, well, there's the Dictate. Well, let's see if our opponent can combo off. We are super punished for not having access to Wear Tear. That's seriously a potentially game-winning card. Opponent passes. Going to Gigadrouse our creatures. Okay. Well, some creatures. We get a Pride Mate and a Squadron Hawk. Well, we play the Pride Mate. Gain some life, pump our Pride Mates. So I guess we'll have to see if our opponent... yeah, let's get in with both. Pass the turn. So we got lethal on board, so they're getting to the point where they're going to have to combo off. There's a Jace Bellerin. Each player draws. Our opponent needs like an exhaustion here, really. Carekeep and Genesis Chamber. Well, let's play Carekeep. This is interesting. Burn at the Stake loses to Remand. Well, let's go to combat. Send everything at our opponent. And we got there. Whew! Even without our Wear Tears. Whew! Alright, well that was good. Oh, still no Wear Tears. Well, this hand gains life, but that's about it. Only 1 land. I think we got a mulligan. Well, I don't know if this hand is really better, but we'll keep it. Mistfall Plains to the bottom. Island for our opponent. We get a Soul Warden. Well, Plains and Soul Warden. Pass the turn. Island for our opponent, and Howling Mine. Getting the draw started. Well, Battlefield Forge and Genesis Chamber. Get in 4-1. Pass the turn. Howling Mine for our opponent. Island. And passes. Another Burn at the Stake and Battlefield Forge. Well, Soul Attendant. Get a 1-1. Gain some life. Battlefield Forge. Soul Attendant. More 1-1s. More life. And get in 4-1. Pass the turn. Opponent has a Dictate. Well, the card draw is real. Hopefully they don't randomly hit a miracle. Alright, no miracle. Serum Visions for our opponent. They probably need an Exhaustion or Gigadrouse. There's Exhaustion. We draw a land, and a champion. Well, Battlefield Forge. Play champion. Gain some life. Get a 1-1. Gain more life. And then get in 4-2. Well, we are to the point where Burn at the Stake is very lethal. But our opponent's getting to the mana stage where they can start doing some extra turns. Opponent passes and discards. We draw a champion, a Pride Mate, and a Norin. Oh, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? We can try to Burn at the Stake, but if our opponent has a Remand, we just basically lose on the spot. Otherwise, we play a bunch of creatures, leave up Outnumber, and hope that we can survive. We know our opponent has remands. Well, I think step one is play a mountain and play a champion of the parish. Pumps everything up. Gains us a bunch of life, gets us a bunch of tokens. We get a bunch more life, a bunch more tokens. Then we play a Norn of the Wary. Go through the same combo, pumping our stuff up. And we might be able to just gain enough life where we can't lose to our opponent unless they can mill us out. And then a Johnny's Pride Mate, exile Norn. Alright, it resolves. Gain a life, which triggers Pride Mate. So our Pride Mate is going to get super huge, super fast. This is turn 5, remember. Turn 5 and look at our board. Pride Mate already up to an 8/8. Go to combat. Do some attacking. Maybe we could have just went for it with the Burn at the Stake. Opponent has another Dictate. So we pump our champions, gain life, pump our Pride Mates, get tokens. Oh, wow. So our opponent's got to be on the mill us out plan. Maybe we should have just tried to Burn at the Stake. Our opponent, oh, it seems so likely they have a remand, though, or some sort of counter. But they didn't counter any of this stuff, but it might be that they just don't care about our creatures. So pass the turn. Opponent gets to draw 3 extra cards. Temporal Mastery for our opponent for an extra turn. Norn, exiled. Another land for our opponent. Norn comes back. Gets us a ton of triggers. So I don't think there's any way they can win with creatures. They're going to have to find a way of winning with mill. And it's not impossible. I expect that our opponent can combo off. The question is it going to be good enough? They're going to need like Elixir of Immortality, because our board is just getting bigger and bigger every extra turn they take. Opponent gets to draw some cards. Plays a land. Hardcast Temporal Mastery. Norn, exiled. Norn comes back. We get a bunch of triggers. Everything keeps growing. Johnny's Pride Mate is going to be like 30 power here in a second. We're up to 67 life. Our opponent's discarding. Island and Island. So I think the way they would have to win would be by ultimating a little Jace multiple times. There's another Temporal Mastery. The good news is a lot of these extra turn spells exile. So even if our opponent can shuffle their graveyard back in, they are still losing those spells. The other issue could be us running out of time by clicking through all these triggers as we gain life and pump our creatures. Opponent discards. Draws some more cards. Serum Visions. Exiles our Norn. Another Serum Visions. And part the Waterveil. I wonder if our opponent can actually win from this position. This Norn is doing some serious work, and our stuff is getting seriously huge. I mean, I think it's possible, but it seems like, all things considered, we're not in that bad of a position. Opponent has to discard, draws a bunch of cards. They discarded or several remands, so they do have remands. Opponent gains a life. There's Little Jace. Opponent takes up Jace. They're still going to need to shuffle their graveyard back in at some point. And that point isn't that far away because they're drawing so many cards per turn. So we'll see. This is ending up interesting. I kind of think we're dead, but I don't think it's guaranteed. And of course, if we ever untap, our opponent's dead. Each player draws. We get another Genesis Chamber. Well, if we end up losing, there's probably an argument we should have just slammed Burn at the Stake and hoped that things would work out. Opponent goes with Exhaustion. Exhaustion is not very relevant, though. Unless they're going to give us another turn. Wow, our opponent's passing? I am not sure what their plan is. So we gain life, keep pumping our stuff. They must have a Giga Drouse? That's the only thing that makes any amount of sense. To tap down a bunch of our stuff? Is that enough? Opponent has to discard. A Johnny's Bridemate up to 50-50. Here comes Giga Drouse. It's gotta be. Alright. Giga Drouse, a million replicates. Seems like it's gonna have to focus mostly on creatures. Maybe they can throw one at a land. What a weird game this has ended up being. So stuff's getting tapped. Creatures, creatures, creatures tapped. We draw, we draw, we draw. Then we attack with all creatures at Jace. Play a Soul Warden. Get a bunch of triggers. Our life total is going to be very high. Are we really going to win this match without Wear Tear? Oh, our opponent gave us the GGs. They said they don't actually have a way of winning from here. Whoo! Alright, well, that was a ridiculous game. I'm kind of surprised we won, but I'm happy.